He lost everything, but then one decision changed his life forever. And this is where his story begins. In a small, quiet town in the middle of the United States, where life moves slowly and dreams often stayed hidden inside tired hearts. His name was Daniel Carter, a simple man in his early 30s who once had big hopes, a loving family, and a decent job. But now he stood alone, staring at the empty room of a rented apartment with nothing but a broken chair, a small bag of clothes, and a heavy silence around him. Just 2 years ago, his life looked completely different. He had a stable job in a marketing company, a warm home, and a wife he deeply loved. Every morning, he woke up with purpose, and every night, he slept with peace. But life does not always follow straight lines, and sometimes one wrong turn can push everything into darkness. The trouble began when the company he worked for suddenly shut down due to financial losses. Overnight, Daniel lost his job. At first, he was confident that he would find another one quickly. He sent out resumes, attended interviews, and kept a positive face. But days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Rejection emails filled his inbox, and silence filled his days. The savings slowly disappeared, and tension slowly entered his home. His wife, Emily, tried to support him, but stress has a way of changing people. Small arguments became daily fights, and daily fights became cold distance. Daniel started feeling like a failure, not just as a worker, but as a husband. To escape the pressure, he began spending time at a local bar, telling himself it was just to relax and clear his head. One drink turned into two, and two turned into many. The bar became his temporary shelter from reality. Bills piled up, rent fell behind, and phone calls from creditors never stopped. Emily begged him to change, to seek help, to try again, but Daniel felt trapped inside his own shame. One night after a bitter argument, Emily packed a small suitcase and left. She said she needed space, but Daniel knew deep inside that she was tired of waiting for him to become the man he once was. After that, everything collapsed quickly. Without Emily, the apartment felt empty and lifeless. Daniel stopped answering calls, stopped checking emails, and stopped caring about time. His landlord eventually asked him to leave, and with nowhere else to go, Daniel moved into a cheap motel at the edge of town. The money he had left barely covered food and rent. Days blended together, each one duller than the last. He often sat on the bed, staring at the stained wall, wondering how his life had fallen so far. He remembered the dreams he once had of building a successful career, buying a house, and starting a family. Now even tomorrow felt uncertain. One cold morning, Daniel woke up with a sharp pain in his chest and a deep heaviness in his mind. He looked at himself in the cracked mirror and barely recognized the tired, unshaven face staring back. His eyes had lost their spark, and his shoulders sagged under invisible weight. Something inside him whispered that if he continued this way, he would completely disappear, not physically, but as a person. That thought scared him more than anything else. He stepped outside the motel, feeling the cold wind against his face, and started walking without a clear direction. He walked for hours, passing familiar streets that now felt distant and strange. He saw people rushing to work, parents holding their children's hands, couples laughing together, and each scene reminded him of what he had lost. By late afternoon, he reached a small park where he used to sit years ago during his lunch breaks. He sat on a cold bench, watching fallen leaves scatter across the ground. His mind replayed moments from his past, his first job, his wedding day, the first apartment he and Emily had shared. For the first time in months, tears rolled down his cheeks, not loud or dramatic, but slow and silent. As the sun began to set, Daniel felt an unfamiliar clarity settling inside him. It was not hope yet, but it was not complete despair either. It was a quiet understanding that something had to change. or his life would remain stuck in this endless loop of regret. He did not know how, and he did not know when, but deep inside, a small spark was slowly starting to glow again. The next morning, Daniel woke up earlier than usual, not because of an alarm, but because his mind refused to rest. The quiet spark he had felt in the park the evening before was still there, faint but steady, like a small light in a dark tunnel. He sat on the edge of the motel bed, took a deep breath, and decided that today he would not hide. He did not have a clear plan, but he knew he had to move forward, even if the steps were small and uncertain. He took a shower, shaved, and put on the cleanest clothes he had. As he looked in the mirror, he whispered to himself that he still mattered, even if life had tried to convince him otherwise. After leaving the motel, he walked to a nearby cafe and spent his last few dollars on a cup of coffee. Sitting by the window, he watched people pass by, each one busy with their own struggles and hopes. For the first time in a long while, he opened his laptop and started updating his resume. His fingers hesitated over the keys, but slowly, line by line, he began to rebuild the story of his professional life. By noon, he had applied for several jobs, including some he never would have considered before. Construction sites, warehouses, delivery services, and local stores, anything that could help him stand on his feet again. Pride had once stopped him from doing such work, but now he understood that honest effort was never something to be ashamed of. In the afternoon, he walked into a small community center he remembered from years ago. A sign on the door said they were looking for volunteers. Without overthinking, Daniel stepped inside and filled out a form. He was assigned to help in the kitchen, preparing meals for people who were struggling just like him. Working there changed something inside him. He met people who had lost homes, families, and health, yet they still smiled and thanked him for a simple plate of food. Their gratitude humbled him. He realized that pain was not unique to him, and that understanding gave him strength. Day after day, he returned to the center, helping, listening, and learning. Slowly, his confidence began to return. One afternoon, while serving meals, he met an elderly man named Mr. Harris, who had once been a successful entrepreneur. Over time, they started talking, and Daniel shared his story. Mr. Harris listened patiently and then told Daniel about his own failures, how he had lost everything twice before finally building something meaningful. He explained that success was not a straight road, but a series of painful lessons. Those words stayed with Daniel long after their conversation ended. A week later, Daniel received a call for a temporary warehouse job. The pay was low, the hours long, but he accepted immediately. The work was exhausting, lifting heavy boxes and standing for hours. But each paycheck, no matter how small, felt like a victory. With his first payment, he moved out of the motel and into a tiny shared apartment. It was cramped and noisy, but it was a step forward. As weeks passed, Daniel fell into a routine. Early mornings at the warehouse, evenings at the community center, and late nights studying online courses to improve his skills. He wanted to be more than just a worker. He wanted to grow. Some nights exhaustion overwhelmed him, but he reminded himself why he had started. He also tried to reach out to Emily, sending short messages, not asking her to return, but simply apologizing and sharing that he was trying to change. At first, there was no reply, and that silence hurt, but he continued anyway. One evening after a long shift, Daniel received a message from Emily. It was brief, but it acknowledged his efforts. She said she was glad he was working on himself and hoped he would continue. That small message filled him with a quiet determination. He knew trust would take time, and he was ready to wait. Months passed, and life slowly began to stabilize. Daniel saved enough money to buy a second-hand car, which allowed him to take extra shifts and explore better job opportunities. He applied for a junior position in a small digital marketing firm using the skills he had learned online. To his surprise, he was called for an interview. Sitting in the waiting room, he felt nervous but hopeful. He knew he was not the same man who had walked into interviews months ago filled with fear and doubt. He was stronger now, shaped by struggle and persistence. As he entered the interview room, Daniel took a deep breath, unaware that this moment would soon lead him toward a path he had never imagined before, one that would test his courage, patience, and belief in himself more than ever. Daniel walked into the interview room with steady steps, though his heart was beating fast. The office was simple, nothing fancy, but it felt warm and welcoming. The interviewer, a middle-aged woman named Karen, greeted him with a calm smile. She asked about his past experience, his recent work, and the long gap in his career. Daniel did not hide anything. He spoke honestly about losing his job, falling into bad habits, losing his marriage, and then slowly finding his way back. He explained how volunteering and hard labor had changed his mindset. He did not try to sound perfect. He only tried to sound real. Karen listened carefully. When he finished, she paused for a moment and then said that honesty and resilience mattered more to her company than a flawless resume. She told him they needed someone who was willing to learn, work hard, and stay committed. Before Daniel even realized it, she offered him a 3-month trial position. It was not a big role, and the salary was modest. But to him, it felt like a door opening after a long, dark night. He thanked her again and again, barely able to hold back his emotions. On his way home, Daniel felt lighter than he had in years. The city streets looked brighter, and the cold air felt refreshing instead of harsh. He called Emily for the first time in months. When she answered, there was a brief silence. Then he shared the news. She congratulated him, and for the first time her voice sounded warm, not distant. They talked for a few minutes, carefully, gently, like two people walking on thin ice, afraid to slip. But even that small conversation gave Daniel hope. The new job was challenging. He had to relearn many things, adapt to new tools, and keep up with fast deadlines. Some days he felt overwhelmed, but he refused to quit. Every mistake became a lesson, and every success, no matter how small, became motivation. His coworkers slowly began to trust him, and his confidence grew. After work, he still volunteered at the community center whenever he could. Helping others reminded him of where he had come from and kept him grounded. 3 months passed quickly. At the end of his trial period, Karen called him into her office. She told him that his dedication, honesty, and work ethic had impressed everyone. She offered him a permanent position with a better salary and growth opportunities. Daniel could hardly believe it. He walked out of her office with a steady smile and tears in his eyes. That evening, he treated himself to a simple dinner at a small restaurant, something he had not done in a very long time. With steady income, Daniel moved into a small but clean apartment. It was nothing luxurious, but it felt like home. He bought a plant for the window, a soft lamp for the corner, and a few framed photos from his past, including one from his wedding day. He did not do it to feel sad, but to remind himself of what truly mattered. Slowly, he and Emily started meeting for coffee. At first, their conversations were awkward, filled with careful words and long pauses. But over time, honesty replaced fear. They spoke about their pain, their mistakes, and their hopes. Healing did not happen overnight, but patience brought them closer again. One evening, as they sat in the same park where Daniel had once cried alone, Emily admitted that she had seen a real change in him. She said she was proud of the man he was becoming. Those words meant more to Daniel than any promotion or paycheck. He realized that success was not just about career or money, but about growth, responsibility, and inner strength. Months later, Daniel received an unexpected email from Mr. Harris, the elderly man he had met at the community center. He invited Daniel to join a small startup project he was mentoring, focused on helping local businesses grow online. The idea excited Daniel. After careful thought, he accepted. Working alongside Mr. Harris opened new doors, and Daniel found himself learning faster than ever. The project slowly gained attention, and opportunities began to multiply. Looking back, Daniel often thought about that cold evening in the park when he had almost given up. He understood now that losing everything had forced him to face himself. It had stripped away comfort, pride, and fear, leaving behind raw determination. That single decision to not stay broken had changed his life forever. Daniel never claimed that his journey was easy, and he never believed that struggle would completely disappear. But he had learned to walk forward, even when the road was unclear, and that he knew made all the difference.